Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Zeddy here, and I'm back at it again to bring you guys part 2 for what if Deku had hands that were rated E for everyone. Just kidding, no, but seriously, what if Deku was a Hyuga Descendant part 2? Now, a lot of you guys actually seem to enjoy the first part. It was pretty short, it was pretty fast paced, so I'm going to be using the same formula for this part. That being said, I'm going to be needing, let's say, 300 likes if you guys are going to be wanting part 3. And with that being said, let's get started. Okay, boys, so where I had basically left off last part was essentially asking you guys whether you guys would or wouldn't like Uraraka to be the ship for the what if. Now, after doing a little bit of thinking, I decided that it would actually be in the best. I'm wording this very badly. In my best interest to make Momo the ship. Not because she can throw hands like everybody or because of how she is in general in the My Hero Academia story, but more specifically to revive the Hyuga clan because she has black hair. Hyugas have blackish hair. I'm not sure if it's black or like blue since Hinata has bluish hair, but I'm pretty sure the Hyugas have like blackish hair, right? So I kind of want to have that be the thing. And I'm going to make Momo's hair the color of Hinata's in this version. She's not going to have Hinata's personality, nothing like that. But in this version, I am going to be changing Momo's character a bit. So on the last part, I had basically ended off with Deku essentially just destroying the quirk exam. Now, after everything had happened, Uraraka would essentially go up to Deku and just be like, wow, you did pretty great. Deku would be getting his stuff together. She would throw his backpack on his shoulder and just be like, yeah, so did you. As he would say, Infinity, that was insane. He would say that he wishes he could have gotten something like that off pure physical strength. And Uraraka would, she'd put her hand behind her head and she's just like, yeah, haha, as she'd just start laughing. This is when Momo would walk past Deku, and right as she's passing by, Momo would basically give Deku those F me eyes, as Deku immediately notices that. And he's just like, hold on now. He tells Uraraka that he'll see her tomorrow, and he walks over to Momo's direction. Uraraka would immediately just get she would low-key get a little angry at this. And this is when Deku would go over to Momo and she's like, hey. Momo would immediately turn around and just be like all surprised. And she's just like, oh, hey, didn't notice you. As Deku would kind of get a little bit of a smirk. This is when Momo would smile and immediately Deku would ask her name. You know what I'm saying? Deku would then look at Momo as he and Momo would, they'd start interacting a little bit. And I'm just going to say this. One thing leads to another and they end up doing unholy Christian things, if you get what I'm putting down, right? And yeah, that's basically what they end up doing. Deku ends up getting him cheeks, and why did I say it like that? I don't know. I'm weird, but yeah. Deku ends up knocking some ankles, and well, the very next day is when they're going to be having the heroes versus villains. Of course, that entire day of school would go pretty much as it does in canon, with the slight exception and the slight little change of the fact that in this version, Uraraka is going to be a little salty at Deku for the fact that he blew her off to go hang out with Momo. During the day, Uraraka would have been giving Deku a little bit of an attitude essentially, and Deku would just be confused. He's just like, why am I getting an attitude? Like, it's not like we're a couple or anything. Uraraka's feelings are kind of hurt because she's like, we're not? And Deku's just like, no, we're not. We're not a couple. I mean, I never said we were we? Uraraka would just be like, no. And this is when Deku would just kind of be like, well, we're just friends, right? As he looks at her and he's like, that's what you see me as, right? Uraraka looks at Deku. She looks down and Deku's just like, oh my god. This is when immediately Deku realizes and he's just like, oh, sorry about that. As he starts laughing and Uraraka's just like, stop it. Immediately Deku would go sit down to his hero class, the final one of the day, when All Might would bust in through the door saying, I am here, walking in like a normal person. Immediately, he would come on in, he'd close the door behind him, and everybody in the class, including Deku, would actually start getting pretty excited at the fact that they have All Might in there. Immediately, they would ask All Might what he's doing there, and All Might would say that he works here. He's going to be teaching at UA for the next couple years. Deku and everybody would get excited, and All Might would proceed to tell them all everything that he did in canon, as well as the clothes make the pros, so go get suited up. Now, Everybody would, of course, go get suited up, and Deku's drip is going to be very, very fire. He's not going to be wearing that ugly Neji outfit because, ew, that's dirty. Get out of here. Nah, Deku's going to be wearing a hoodie, literal, indestructible hoodie. So, like, he's going to have 4 different colors. He's going to have white, black, sort of like a beige, like a brownish whitish color, I guess you could say, because it's kind of saucy, not gonna lie. And he would also have a dark blue, right? And those are his 4 hoodies. He would also just rep those ninja pants where he would have shuriken and stuff in the holster. And for his shoes, he would just be wearing, I don't know, whatever you guys want, just some drippy shoes, whatever shoes he's really in the mood for at the time. That being said, this is when we will now basically have Deku see everybody else outside. Everybody would see each other with their pro costumes on, and everybody would actually be admiring each other. They'd be like, yo, hold on now, Deku do be looking kind of saucy. Some people would say that Deku's costume looks a little bit on the plainer side, but Deku he's rocking it, man. Deku's looking pretty good with the outfit, so everybody's just kind of like, all right, whatever. And this one, All Might would, of course, start giving out the teams. Just like in canon, everything would basically go as you would expect. Deku with Uraraka versus Bakugo and Ida. This would basically lead to what happens in canon. Bakugo would give Deku a little bit of just an irritable stare, and Deku would return it right back at Bakugo because he's not about to sit there and just take that. Come on now. This version of Deku ain't no B word, you know. He's none of that. So Deku definitely gives Bakugo that stare back, and this is when Uraraka would notice that little fire between them. Yeah, she notices that. She would ask Deku what's been going on, and Deku would proceed to tell her that ever since he got his quirk, he basically was always trying to get belittled by Bakugo for having a weaker quirk than his. But as time went on and Deku trained his power, he ended up being able to defeat Bakugo, and that led to Bakugo getting a little bit of a god complex and just thinking that he's better than everybody as soon as he got his quirk. He would explain that Bakugo just became a big jerk after unlocking it, and how, you know, he basically just doesn't like him because of that. Uraraka would be like, oh, looks like you guys are childhood rivals, right? And Deku would say something like that. This one, Uraraka would say, well, don't let me get in the way. You better do your best out there. Deku would smile at her as he would say, right, as it's at this point that they would both go inside. Bakugo and Ida would go inside, and Bakugo would be like, take care of the bomb, Four Eyes. Immediately, Deku would look at Uraraka and tell her that she should honestly just stick by Deku's side, that this should be quick as soon as Bakugo comes rushing at him. Uraraka would be like, rushing at you? And this is when right on cue, you can hear, Deku! Just coming in from the corner, as Deku would immediately just be like, that's my cue. As he would rush over to where Bakugo's at, immediately Bakugo would turn the corner and throw an explosion, to which Deku would grab Bakugo by the wrist and slam him, or so he would try. Bakugo would use an explosion to propel himself back up and kick Deku square in the jaw, causing Deku's jaw to start bleeding a little bit and for Deku to have it dislocated. Deku would basically pop it back into place, and he would proceed to spit on the ground as he's just like, yeah, you just signed up for death. As he would get into his position, Bakugo would chuckle and say, looks like you're not the only one that's been training for the past 10 months, Deku. I'm gonna put you in your place. He would immediately rush towards Deku's direction, as he would stop right outside of Deku's range, and he would start shooting a bunch of AP shots at Deku. Immediately, Deku would realize this, and this is when Deku would say, air palm, as he would start shooting palm attacks at Bakugo, to which he's actually dodging with quite finesse. And this is when Deku would basically whip out the shuriken, as he would throw them, and they would be wired shuriken. So when Bakugo landed back down on the ground, the wires basically caught Bakugo, and he was stuck in place. So all that was left was for Deku to pretty much blitz the man and just go 1 palm, 2 palm, 3 palm, 36 palms, 64 palms. You know, he lands the entire 64 palms. And that basically leads to a one-way ticket to Recovery Girl. And yeah, that's basically what happens to Bakugo. That being said, this is when Deku and Uraraka would go face Ida and yada yada yada. You guys get the point. They end up destroying him, and they end up basically winning the event. That being said, Deku after class, instead of going with Momo, he'd basically proceed to talk to Momo a little bit, but at the end of everything, he would decide that maybe he should give Uraraka a chance to plead her case. You know, maybe Uraraka might be better than Momo, even though Momo had that she had the wop, you know, she had the thing, you know. Anyways, Deku, you know, he's chilling, right? And he goes out with Uraraka, right? He does that, he does his thing, he does his thing, right? And he ends up actually liking them both equally. So the very next day, when it's the day of the USJ, actually no, for the very next week, Deku just proceeds to go back and forth between Momo and Uraraka. Just like, which one do I want? Which one do I want? He's just like completely undecisive about everything. But ultimately, Deku pretty much ends up deciding that he's just gonna get them both. I mean, what are they gonna say? No. Look at Deku. I mean, the man is an absolute Chad, bro. He's built different. He can have two at the same time if he really wanted to. So that's basically what Deku does. And with that being said, this is when we will now be jumping over to the day of the USJ. Of course, just like any other what if that is of mine, they're of course going to be in the bus. Just like in canon, of course, everybody on the bus will of course be talking about who the strongest person in the class. Now, this debate would basically be what around Todoroki or Deku. And a lot of people, actually the majority of people, would say that Deku's of course impressive, but if it was to come to close quarters combat, Deku wouldn't be able to even get close to Todoroki. So a lot of them are saying that, Todoroki would probably beat Deku, especially Ojiro and the other guy who he was teamed up with during their, the portion that they had to fight against Shoto. That being said, they would of course immediately arrive to the USJ. And upon just getting close to the USJ, Deku would immediately just sense a bunch of chakras nearby. Deku would immediately just be like, is there supposed to be this many people inside? Aizawa would just be like, what are you talking about, Deku? And this is when Deku would basically proceed to explain that there's a bunch of chakra signatures inside of there. Aizawa would immediately be, what are you talking about? And Deku would then say, Byakugan! As immediately the Byakugan would activate, as Deku would look inside and he would see a bunch of people in there. He would even see 13. And this is when Deku would basically tell Aizawa that he can count at least 300 people inside of there, all looking to have bad intentions. Aizawa would immediately just take out his little walkie-talkie and he'd basically proceed to call All Might down. As All Might and a bunch of other pro heroes would arrive on the scene, this is when they would go inside and immediately the villains would be on guard because they're just like, yo, why are these people not coming on cue? I thought they were supposed to come at this time. Because, the UA trader told them it was at this time, but they ended up coming about 10 minutes later, right? And so they got there with all the heroes that got there by the time that All Might beat Shigaraki and the Nomu and all that stuff. And yeah, when the pro heroes go in there, they abolish and they destroy everything essentially. All Might obliterates the Nomu just like in canon, and in this version of events, Deku kind of just chills back with Momo and Uraraka, kind of flirting it up the entire time. This is when after the USJ, Deku would basically take them both back to his place, and this is when they would both actually end up meeting Inko. Inko at the end of the dinner would basically end up telling Deku which one he's gonna pick, and Deku would tell Inko that he just went with both. What's it called? Inko would just be like, what? You have two girlfriends at a time? And Deku was like, yeah, you know me, mom. I'm built different. Inko would immediately grab a newspaper and smack the boy across the face. As Deku was just like, what did I do? Inko was just immediately like, don't play with me, boy. You know exactly what it is you did. You better go out there and apologize to those young ladies. As Deku was like, all right, I'll pick one. And he just proceeds to tell Inko that he will, but he never does. The man is not built for one. He is a two-person, come on now, he's a two-person type of guy, right? And this basically leads to about 1 week of normal school, let's say 2 weeks of normal school, and Deku basically training after school and doing a little bit of studying every now and then, of course, because my boy Deku built different, right? That being said, this is when we will now jump over to the day in which Aizawa essentially tells everybody about the UA Sports Festival. In this version of events, however, the Class 1A isn't exactly looked at as more powerful than Class 1B, even though they are, but nobody's exactly going to, how do I put this? Nobody's exactly going to surround the classroom and try to see what the competition is like, because to put simply, Class 1A never ended up fighting against the villains, meaning that there's no real reason for the other people to do that. So, with that being said, there's really nothing that goes on in terms of that. That being said, this is when we're essentially just going to cut on over to the day of the UA Sports Festival, and everything would be in play just like you would expect. The first event would of course be the UA race. However, before that, Deku would be told to essentially give the speech, which is, kind of common courtesy to all my Dekus. Most of them always end up giving the speech. So yeah, Deku ends up having to do that, and just like in canon, Deku kind of does a pretty cool speech. The crowd gets pretty hyped up, and this pretty much, not just like in canon, because in canon Bakugo did it, but just like my canon what ifs, which they're canon in my eyes. I love each and every single one of my what ifs equally, as if they were my children. Just kidding, not really. I love, some of them. I have clear favoritism when I do what ifs, in case you haven't noticed. But with that being said, this would basically lead to the race being announced by midnight. She would of course shoot the starting pistol, and this is when we will basically have everybody rush over to the finish line. Immediately Todoroki would shoot his ice geyser, as everybody would start dodging over it, jumping over that geyser, and people would just start basically rushing in through there, right? Essentially what would have happened in the original would pretty much happen, and Deku would at first struggle with the ice because he's kind of not used to running on literal ice. So he struggled a little bit, but after he got past that and Todoroki's little obstacles got out of the way, Deku pretty much runs by the 0-pointers that Tetsu and Kirishima get crushed. And this one he would basically go through all of the events, such as the landmines, the weird abyss that's in the ground with like the poles that are sticking out with footholds and all that. Deku would basically do that. And this is basically going to essentially lead us into the what do I want to do? What do I want to do? This is going to pretty much lead us into the cavalry battle. Yeah, I had a little bit of a brain fart for a second, but yeah, the cavalry battle, right? Now, they would all basically end up getting in the same teams due to the fact that Deku's a Hyuga, not, anything different, and his friends that he's around are basically the same ones as he has in canon. Ida and Deku are kind of cool now because Ida got to know Deku, and he kind of looks up to Deku as in some sort of way, shape, and form, right? Kind of looks up to Deku a little bit, and so Deku, he has a little bit of a friendly relationship with Ida. That being said, Deku and Ida actually end up getting put together in the same team instead of Meihatsume, and Deku ends up getting about, let's say, 3rd place because Deku's not that OP in this version of events, right? He tries his best to keep people from his headband, but ultimately Deku never ended up getting first place, so he ended up getting the second highest amount of points. He ended up beating Bakugo, however, since the man is pretty fast on his feet. That being said, this is when we will now jump over to the battles, the one-on-one battles, and this is when we shall now jump into the first battle, which is Deku versus Shinso. Immediately as soon as the battle starts, Shinso just starts talking mad stuff to Deku. Like, he immediately gets on his must be nice to have such an amazing quirk. Must be nice to be this, must be nice to be that. Being in the hero course is cool. And this is when he finally says something that gets on Deku's last nerves. He talks crap about Deku's females like Uraraka and Momo. He says, must be nice to be a pretty boy. After hearing that, Deku was just like, nah, bro. And he literally speaks up as Shinso smiles, and immediately Deku goes into his mindscape, the same area which Deku saw the vestiges of One for All. However, Deku would not see the vestiges of One for All. He would see the entirety of the Uchiha clan, or at least a flashback of them. He would see like a little bit of a picture in his mind of the Hyuga clan around the same time period as Hinata and Neji and all that stuff. He would see Asashi and all that stuff, and Deku, upon seeing them, he would notice that a lot of them have his eyes. This is when Deku would basically snap back into reality, and this is when he would basically tell Shinso to do that again. As Deku had broken out of it through sheer will alone, Shinso would trap him under the Genjutsu once again, and this would basically lead to Deku, instead of this time seeing the normal Hyuga, he would see the Otsutsuki, because sorry if I did your ears wrong if you're wearing headphones or earbuds, because I kind of just decided that I wanted to do this for you guys. But yeah, apologies if I messed up your eardrums. That being said, Deku would see the Otsutsuki, and yeah, I'm pretty sure many of you guys can already tell what I'm basically trying to build up to. Deku is definitely going to be getting that crispy Tensegon, potentially. I haven't decided yet, but most likely I'll give him the evolution. That being said, this is when I will now jump over to back into the fight with Deku and Shinso. Deku would immediately look at Shinso's direction as he's just in a little bit of a cold sweat, and Deku would rush at Shinso as he doesn't say another word. Deku was about to step out, but he turns back around and knocks Shinso out of the arena. Immediately, everybody's just confused as to what happened in this battle, because it was just 30 seconds of pure who knows what just went on. That's basically how people would classify the battle if they had to. That being said, this is when, you know, the rest of the battles would pretty much go on, and this is when Deku versus Todoroki or Shoto would begin. However, boys, if you guys want to see the third part and most likely the finale to What If Deku Was a Hyuga Descendant, you guys, as I said at the beginning of the video, are going to be needing to smash 300 likes. Now, boys, I know you can do it, and if you guys don't end up smashing the 300 like goal, I'm just going to be dropping part 3 to either One For All Naruto or Drag Kneel Naruto. That being said, that's basically all for me today. I really have nothing else to drop for you guys in terms of content for today. A little bit of a fast-paced What If, I know, but I'm kind of running a little bit short on time today, so there's not really much that I could provide to you guys today. That being said, boys, you guys know the drill. I love each and every single one of you guys. Make sure to go check out the link to my merch store down in the description, as well as the link to my Discord server if you haven't become a member already. And with that being said, I love each and every single one of you guys. Again, you guys know I appreciate you. And that being said, deuces.